Gyasi to try and draw his attention away from Josh. And all of this is allowing the front 7 to make a little bit of a breakaway from this pack. And this is what you find here at Le Mans. We saw it in the sprint challenge just before as well. These fields seem to break up into little battle packs all the way through, and you can see side-by-side action further back, but your leaders, well, it's Graham Carroll now ahead of Mitchell de Jong. I will say something, it's good to see Graham back up at the front of the field because he's had a torrid season.
He absolutely has, and of course the drafting there, switching the places around between Graham Carroll and Mitchell de Jong. We now go on board with Thomas Tattler. He runs in 3rd place. That is Mitchell de Jong just ahead of him on track. This is, of course, the Vodafone on board as we now come through the Porsche curves for the first time in this race. And for Thomas Tattler, of course, he's had some good runs at points over the season, running here in 3rd place. But de Jong ahead of him, don't forget, is on the outside looking in. So on one hand, in terms of points, he needs to have a strong points haul today to maybe get him the automatic qualification. However, he's also thinking, I don't want to be in a situation where I lose so many of these points, as we now have a look from the rear of that number 16 car of Mac Backham, as you can see just how close it is in this second battle pack. It's Kevin Ellis Jr. just behind Mac Backham.
Yeah, Junior flashing the lights. He's trying to get in the eye line of Backham there, but Mac is a very experienced driver in this sort of scenario. Interesting to see that Rogers has been able to draft back up to Dane Warren, and he's brought Jeff Gyasi and Jeremy Bouteloup with him as well. So the top 10 now together in a line, as I've noticed on my time screen that Josh Anderson has fallen all the way to the back of the field, so he's had an incident further down. Yeah, so the 36 all the way to the back of the field here today. He's not had the best of seasons as Josh, neither has Bobby Zelensky, who's in that penultimate place. Also, talking about the top 20 and the fight for relegation, or the fight to stay away from relegation, big news is Brian Lockwood has been unable to take the start of this race, and he was there on the bubble.
He was, if memory serves me correctly, in 18th place in the championship heading into this event, and now it's likely, especially with de Jong doing so well, it's likely that one might change. Vodafone replay then. Let's show you what happened with Joshua Anderson as the Australian driver. This is into the Dunlop curve on lap number 2, and is he going to get turned around? Yep, a little bit of a tap from the rear then from one of the core sim racing cars, and that is why Joshua Anderson's right at the rear of the field. And look at this one, once again out front, we've got battles going on for the race lead, and that is Mitchell de Jong back to the top. The point that, Paul, you made a moment ago, I was just having a look through the numbers there. Dane Warren didn't slow down to allow Josh to come back up. That was all Rogers and Gyasi finally getting onto the same page and finally realising what they needed to have done.
Speaking of Warren, by the way, he's dropped down to 16th place now as we look with Jamie Fluke on board in the Apex Racing Team car. Up into 3rd place is he, side by side with Thomas Tattler. So all of a sudden, things are starting to get a little bit exciting, a little bit spicy here in this top battle pack. And Jamie can sniff himself a podium place right here.
Yeah, and this is mighty, mighty close. Your top 6 drivers are separated. Now your top 7 drivers separated by 1 second on track. They are de Jong, Carroll, Fluke, Tattler, Erskard, Job and Rogers. Jeff Gyasi has kind of fallen back a little bit, and it does look as though Dane Warren must have just cut a chicane somewhere, because he has now fallen down to 15th place on the racetrack. But this is, again, where you've got to hope that all these passes, the good thing about Le Mans is that it's wide enough when you get to most parts of the racetrack where you make your overtaking, but Paul, that's not always the case.
No, and look behind this battle that we're looking at, because Job and Rogers, so as well as Tetela and Erstgaard, there's also Job and Rogers going side by side through the Porsche curves. You can just see them to the right of the shot there, disappearing off shot. There they are. I mean, talk about the two championship protagonists at the front of your championship, battling it out like two gunslingers out in the west, and Job able to head out to the front of Rogers again, and Giassi's trying to get involved, so too is Jeremy Bootloop as well.
Yeah, so it was side by side all the way through the Porsche curves, and then we've got the battle for the race lead on top. We're looking at Dane Warren 15th place on the bottom of your screen, but Sebastian and Josh, they were side by side for almost a mile there through arguably one of the most complicated sections of the racetrack to go side by side. So this battle for the championship, Rogers is still playing aggressively. He knows that he needs to A, be ahead of Sebastian Job, but also B, try to goad Seb into making a mistake, because as it stands right now, Rogers is, of course, still so many points back in the championship. And if were to finish this way with Sebastian Job ahead of Rogers, then Sebastian will, of course, be the 2020 champion, as we've got Alejandro Sanchez, bottom of your screen now, Paul. And, of course, he started from the rear of this field, now up to 23rd place.
Yeah, he's slowly been progressing. The problem is that in front of him is a couple of seconds gap, so he's not going to have that slipstream of Martin Kroenke ahead of him, and he's dragging along with him Jack Sedgwick, Jared Filsell, Antoine Hijla, and Valtteri Alanda, as well as Filsell. I can see on the timing screen has moved ahead of Sedgwick. So Sanchez, he's in that unfortunate spot. It was a nightmare of him to not get a lap time in. I mean, really, this is one of those tracks where you do need to at least get yourself a banker lap in to get at least a solid time, and then look forward. Now, at the front of your field, I can tell as we look on board with Jeff Giassi, you can see that queue of cars ahead of him, and I can tell you, De Jong is actually pulling out a slight gap at the front, because Carroll is coming under pressure from Fluke. Fluke's coming under pressure from Tetela. You've got Tommy Erskard involved in there. He's then right directly in front of Sebastian Job, with Rogers right in the tail of him, and Jeff Giassi, who we were on board with, not that far behind them.
You know what? In that circumstance, you can see the lights are now being flashed from the Graham Carroll car, who has closed up down the latter half of the Mulsanne straight that time. But again, look at how close this one is, because now they're going to go too wide on the exit of Mulsanne, and that is going to be mighty close again. And this is between Job and Rogers. And what happened there, it all started when Seb was trying to actually go around the outside of Tommy Erskard. Rogers, as it stands right now, they are neck and neck, and Rogers is just about possibly going to get that one complete as they do the run into Indianapolis, and indeed, yes, he has. So that's where the teamwork can really help you out.
Well, you touched on that in qualifying, didn't you, about how that teamwork can really help you out, and Joshua has got those teammates around him. Oh, as Patrick Holtzman has been running wide further down as well, so Setsos has made his way past, and Holtzman not helping his teammate down in 19th.
You know what, I had that quick, oh my word, that better not be Seb. Thankfully, the car numbers are pretty easy to see on these machines, and you're able to tell that that was not the 22 car, thankfully, for Sebastian. And it is now Erskard in 5th place, Rogers in 6th, Sebastian Job in 7th, Jeff Giassi in 8th place. So, as it stands right now, this championship will still continue. De Jong is leading the way in this race. In terms of retirees, just having a quick look through, we don't actually have any retirees. Just had the one driver not start. We have got a replay there upcoming on your screen. The Vodafone replay right now. This is Patrick Holtzman in that Red Bull Racing Esports car, and just a little contact, little argy-bargy there, and going off and he does just miss the tyre barrier at the exit of that one.
I mean, you saw how Dane Warren, the back end, stepped out on him through the right-hander, and that just caught him out, got him into the side of Holtzman, and because you're so hard on the brakes whilst coming around the corner there, it's so easy to unsettle the car, and that's why Holtzman ended up going off into the gravel at Indianapolis. Right now, if I'm Josh Rogers, I am in communication with my team manager or my engineer or whoever's working with him and saying, right, come on, get Tommy out the way for me. I want to try and get further up this field now, get as many points as I can over my rival, because it's all well and good being in front, but I'm only one place in front of my championship contender here. So he's going to be on the blower. In fact, I think he's going to start making some moves here.
Yep, this will have to be made to look at least somewhat legitimate.
Yep.
Let's not forget that we have had drivers penalised this season already for essentially doing team order like stuff or deliberately helping out someone a part of their same stable. But Rogers is past Erskard there, and now Erskard is going to be the one who's having to defend from Sebastian Job. I'm hoping we can get a look on board with Seb, actually, because this was going to be a great couple of corners to see how quickly he closes up to the rear of Tommy Erskard and how quickly he might get past in this one. We've got half a lap to go. Reminder, these races today, they run to time. Sorry, they run to laps and not to time even. And Seb couldn't do anything over Erskard, but it's actually on the run out of this corner last time that the two tried going side by side.
Two Celtic drivers right there. You got the Scotsman of Graham Carroll and the Northern Irishman of Jamie Fluke side by side through the chicane. Oh, and Josh Rogers is going to go past them all here down the hard shoulder, can he? Oh my goodness, the hard shoulder here is very bumpy. He tried to make a look but didn't make any moves in the end. Again, Job trying to go around the outside of Erskard, and now all of a sudden this race has come alive here in the final half of this lap.
You could throw a net over your top 7 or 8 drivers right now, except for Mitchell de Jong, who has really pulled away and checked out in this race. There you can see, and again going to the kind of hard shoulder, they got extra little bits of asphalt. They go free wide even on the run in towards Indianapolis, and they all come together for the moment there, and that's hard into the wall for that was for Jamie Fluke, yes indeed. But none of our championship contenders were involved in that one. Rogers up to 3rd place though, Erskard up to 4th, Sebastian Job into 5th place right now. But that will try and get a replay of that one after the race, because we've seen them going too wide for the Porsche curves already in this event, and who knows what's going to happen in the last couple of corners, because Rogers now down to the inside of Graham Carroll, and Rogers up into 2nd place with just a handful of corners remaining, and it looks as though actually Rogers is preparing to check out immediately. Graham Carroll has got himself 2 places between himself and Sebastian Job, so even if he wanted to just make a mild mistake and move out of the way, he couldn't do so right now. But it's Mitchell de Jong with an always 2-second advantage, now just heading himself on the exit of these final couple of corners into the final chicane then. Oh, we've got a big crash off at the rear. We'll talk about that one at the moment, because that's de Jong taking the checkered flag. He has taken the checkered flag. De Jong with the victory, Rogers 2nd, Graham Carroll in 3rd place, Sebastian Job in 4th. And who was that? Because I've seen, falling down my timing screens, a load of stuff happening.
So there was Tetelo involved, there was Jeff Giassi, and then all sorts of shenanigans with the rejoin at the end there at the final chicane. So I'm sure the race stewards, Tyler Hudson, the race control, will have a look at that post-event. But that's the first race of the afternoon done already.
It is, and of course these sprint races, they are normally 15 minutes long, only about 4 laps here. So the results coming up on your screen, Mitchell de Jong claims the victory by 1.4 seconds over Joshua Rogers. Graham Carroll comes home in 3rd place, and Sebastian Job in 4th. And that's mainly because of 2 big incidents that we had on the last lap of the race, which I will say has helped Rogers in terms of his points haul a little bit more than it might have been a lap ago. Then you've got Sebastian Job 4th. The rest of those results coming up on your screen as we speak right now. But Connery, we're going to hand back to Connery in a moment's time. But Paul, very, very, very quickly, this second race, if it's anything like the first, it's just going to be spellbinding.
It's going to be down to that last lap and the checkered flag. I can't wait for this one.
I can't indeed. We'll hand it back to Connery in a moment.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the 2020 Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup here at the Circuit de la Sarthe for round number 9 of the season. We've just had a brilliant enthralling sprint race to set the stage for the main event. Mitchell de Jong taking the race win at the end of that one. That is so crucial in terms of his particular battle to even stay in this championship coming into 2021.
Certainly is, and he's done a fantastic job in that first race to go from pole position and to be able to hold on to that new switching positions with Graham Carroll. But as soon as that pack behind Carroll and Fluke started battling, he knew he could get his head down, he could really push on and hopefully get that gap, and it's exactly what happened for him. But behind him, just all sorts of manner of chaos happened in that final lap there.
Yeah, and of course we would have Mr. Will Vincent on the cameras, but apparently having things over Zoom goes against his academic regulations or something like that. But we'll have to ask him a little bit later what the exact story is. But yeah, just another brilliant race, solid race. But for some drivers, we'll get to see in the replays coming up, it didn't exactly go to plan, did it?
No, certainly not, and a few incidents involved there, especially into that final chicane and the final lap there, which I'm sure we'll get to look at. But things have mixed things up a little bit in the championship as well, which is something that we will get to see very shortly. But yeah, definitely these drivers, they're duking it out. They know that it's the penultimate round of the championship. In fact, there's your updated championship point. So yeah, you could. It's interesting to see how we go into the final 3 races of this season.
Here we go. Updated points. Sebastian Job has an 80-point advantage over Joshua Rogers. He needs 86 to win here today. If he's not able to do that, well, then he'll have to do it at Monza instead. But look further down the order, though, because I spot Mitchell de Jong. Thanks to that sprint race win, he's promoted himself from outside the bubble in P21 to very firmly qualifying inside the bubble in P17. But the points still there, points around about that area of the standings are still so close. So it could just quite easily revert itself if de Jong has a poor main race here.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunate for Brian Lockwood not to be able to take to the grid in this one, which is a shame for him in the top 20 standings, because he was right there in 19th before this particular race. So don't write it off though if he can if he does end up missing out on today. I mean, you look at that on the 2 points off of that top 8. Top 20 now is Brian. Joshua Anderson, he was another one who had an incident in that race, dropped him down the order, so he'll be hoping for a better feature race here. Of course, a longer race, 8 laps. It's certainly going to be a bit more time for drivers to be able to do things.
Yeah, we saw a good couple of close moments in that sprint race, and I think that's going to be a theme continuing into the main event. We'll get a couple of replays up on screen for you now, and it was basically up and down the field. Drivers were getting a little bit close, having some really fantastic fights, but sometimes those fights really did end in tears. You can see some drivers trying to make passes on the hard shoulder as well. It is actually a hard shoulder. This is on board with Joshua Rogers as he goes straight onto the hard shoulder, onto the grass, 2 tires on the right side, trying to make up some positions. This is how desperate for points Joshua Rogers is in his battle with Job for the championship. He's going to have to take risks like that.
He certainly is, and he's got to take those opportunities. So, but you can see the 2 drivers in front, Fluke on the left, Graham Carroll on the right. Now Josh Rogers is getting that slipstream. He's trying to look to the middle. He's trying to force his way through. That isn't happening. So then you've got Thomas Tetteler coming to the outside and coming into this right-hand kick, coming up into Indianapolis. You can't go 3 wide through here. You could go 2 wide at a push, but 3 into 2 doesn't go. And Tetteler ends up putting Fluke heavily into the barrier. Amazing avoidance there from Graham Carroll and from Joshua Rogers to avoid the returning Tetteler to manage to avoid an even bigger car crash here. But yeah, we'll get the rest of the lap here, Connery. You can see just how intense the battles were. The next one was again Tetteler, him and Jeff Giassi going into the first of the Ford chicanes. And then there was another one involving Patrick Holtzman on the exit of the Ford chicanes.
Yeah, in that previous incident, though, into Indianapolis, you saw a car come back across the circuit, and that could have so easily hit one of your championship contenders. It could have hit Job. It could have hit Rogers. If it hit Job, then, well, Rogers is definitely rubbing his hands at the end of this sprint race. But fortunately, that car coming back across the circuit, missing everyone. So everyone's able to continue. You can just wind this through the rest of the lap now, coming towards the end of the Porsche curves. Of course, problems for many drivers in this race. There's Jeff Giassi, who seemed to be involved in a lot of it. Let's just say here, into the final chicanes, just tags the Heuer Esports car around, back onto the circuit, and I guess that's karma in about 3 seconds.
And there was one of the Coanda cars ended up losing control as well, so in front of them, which caused even more shenanigans out of the final chicane. So yeah, all a bit of desperation getting involved, and these drivers determined to give Tyler Hudson a hard time of it, one of the series admins here in this championship. But yeah, these drivers, this is it. It's gloves off time. This is the important part of the championship. You need to set yourself up for the final round of the championship at Monza in a couple of weeks' time. And these drivers, they know they have to get every opportunity they can and take it with both hands.
Well, that's simply what you have to do at this stage. But of course, if you want to get started in your iRacing career and your sim racing career, log on to iRacing.com today to get started in the rookie series, where we'll be driving some MX-5s on some of the free tracks here on the iRacing service. And maybe one day, maybe in a couple of years' time, you'll get to involve yourself in these types of competitions that we feature here today for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we all start from somewhere. Sign up to iRacing.com today. But we've got yet more replays on the cards here, Paul, of a couple more problems throughout this race here today. This one is actually perhaps going to be looked at by the stewards at the end of the event, because it does affect the championship here, Paul. As you see, look to the inside here, and oh, there we go.
So that's what caused those that shenanigans in front of Jeff Giassi and Thomas Tetteler, and that's Sebastian Job that we ran on board with, and that was the 58 car. So that was Tommy Erstgaard on the exit of that corner, and yeah, definitely could be a crucial thing going into the final round of the championship.
Well, with that, our little warm-up between the two sessions is over. The qualifying grid will look like this. Paul, take it away.
Thank you very much again, Connery. As yet, the grid is going to come rumbling through your screen in just a moment's time. And of course, by virtue of winning the sprint race, it will be Mitchell de Jong starting on pole position for this second feature race. Josh Rogers alongside him, row 1. Graham Carroll, Sebastian Job, row 2. Mac Backham, Kevin Ellis Jr. for row number 3. Row 4, Johan Harf, Ricardo Castroledo. Row 5, Dane Warren and Alexander Thebe. Then Christopher Danbeat, Alexius Yakola on row 6. Row number 7, Carl Janssen and Sindre Setsas. Thomas Tattler, Martin Kroenke, row 8. David Williams, Alejandro Sanchez, row 9. And then row 10, Patrick Holtzman and Tommy Erskard. Those drivers will be getting ready to go in about 30 seconds time, Paul. Very quickly, one thing I've noticed, a lot of teammate pairings on rows of the grid for this race.
Yeah, absolutely. 2x2, and this could be a real Noah's Ark of a race as well. So we'll see how this one goes.
Indeed so. So just waiting now for those last couple of drivers to head themselves to the starting grid. Those lights are out. We are away for 30 minutes worth of racing in the feature race. And of course, the winner of this race will also take home a nice, cool, calm $1,000 for virtue of winning. But for Rogers and for Sebastian Job, they've got much bigger things in mind than that. Mitchell de Jong gets a good start. Rogers gets a good start. Graham Carroll does stay ahead of Sebastian Job in the opening couple of corners as they work through the S's for the first time. 3 wide already going on behind them. Calm it down, guys. It's 8 laps here in this feature race, and that was Kevin Ellis Jr., Johan Harf and Ricardo Castroledo. But on the exit Tetra Rouge onto the Mulsanne for the first of 8 laps here. Remember, it's not a 30-minute race here today. It's 8 laps around the Le Mans racetrack. And, well, that does make our job a little bit easier, Paul, because I have once actually called the last lap of a 24-hour race around this track incorrectly, allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. As we head on down then towards the first chicane on the Mulsanne, de Jong having to just pull back in behind his teammate of Rogers. So Rogers is in front of de Jong, so up into the lead. We had an incident, by the way, with Jeff Giassi involved, and also the 110 of Christopher Danbeat heading into the Dunlop chicane, and, well, spin around and all sorts of carnage involved. And Giassi, after all of this, after everything that happened at the end of that first race, getting involved again as they're going 3 wide at the front of your field as well. Sebastian Job looking to the inside, but Rogers stays ahead.
He does. And now you've got P2, P1 in the championship, P1, P2 in this race. And this is going to be incredible. I wonder how much de Jong's going to try and help out his teammate here and make life more complicated for Sebastian Job. But you can see the side drafting going on between these two drivers as they work themselves into Mulsanne corner right now, the end of the Mulsanne straight. And of course, this is where it gets a little bit tighter on the exit of this corner. And now it is the run to Indianapolis. And if I was Sebastian Job, I was maybe thinking about whether or not you could have tucked in, because as it stands, without the outside line when they do get into Indianapolis. And I wonder where Mitchell de Jong is going to park his car on the racetrack at the moment. We talked about the Noah's Ark. Well, there we have it, 2x2, left-hand lane. You've got the Red Bull Racing Esports drivers, right-hand lane, you've got the Coanda drivers, and now everyone almost back into line again. But a fantastic run on the exit of Indianapolis for Sebastian Job. But can he hold it around the outside into Arnage? The answer to that one is no, but this is great. Absolutely great pinnacle of sim racing precision there between these two drivers and everyone else around them.
Yeah, absolutely. Mitchell de Jong, of course, stablemate, not teammate strictly speaking, in this race, but he is a stablemate of Joshua Rogers, so he'll be wanting to help out his friend, that's for sure. But he was a rival against Joshua Rogers last season, don't forget, for the championship. So even though they're in the same stable, they are rivals out there on track. But Graham Carroll, he's up there in 4th place. He's trying to throw that curveball in there as well. So it is really intriguing how the front of this field is going to go. And don't forget, a driver who's had a really good season this season, Kevin Ellis Jr. for Apex Racing Team. They're in 5th place. He wants to really be the cat amongst the pigeons and really just shake everything up and say, well, I want a win.
I tell you what, in a race where most of the conversation will be dominated around 2 sets of drivers, then the Apex driver of Kevin Ellis Jr. would love to basically spoil that propaganda party and make it all about him and his stable on track here today. So it's the Australian still leading the way on track. The Englishman in 2nd place. Rogers leading, Sebastian Job in 2nd. The American of Mitchell de Jong from California in 3rd place. Then the Scottish driver of Graham Carroll in P number 4. Just to let you know, everyone is circulating on track. Of the 30 that took the green flag here today, they are all still circulating. Currently, P1 to P30 is 16 odd seconds on track. There is a little battle going on. P9, P10, by the way. Alexander Thieve and Sindre Setsas, as they look as though they've been going side by side for a while. As I'll work onto the mall sign once again, you can see the battle pack going on there between P number 8 and P number 12 now on track. Want to go back to Jeff Giassi, though, Paul, very briefly. And I know I've had it in my sim racing career. You just sometimes have a bad day. And they always say, you know, the next corner, the next lap is always a new one. But there's days when you just have a nightmare, and he's had a nightmare today.
Yeah, it's not been the best of days for him, and as much as you want to, you know, Jackie Stewart always used to say, take the emotion out of racing. And that is exactly what you need to do here. If you end up having incidents, you need to just forget about it as quickly as possible. Don't let it stew, or else you end up making more mistakes and get up involved in more incidents. So, yeah, Jeff not having a good day at the office here as they head on through down the final part of the Mulsanne Straight, and Sebastian Job sitting there in the draft, and he's just waiting. He's not going, he's not committing to trying to make a move yet. He's just trying to show his nose, and right now he doesn't need to make moves here, does he, Will? He can just afford to sit behind Joshua Rogers and get those positions, but he's got to be careful of Mitchell de Jong right behind him.
Well, don't forget, I commentated at the very, very start of Sebastian Job's sim racing career, and yet we have got an incident off at the back. That's Patrick Holtzman involved in the third Red Bull Racing Esports driver, the number 27 car. Patrick Holtzman then off track, but we go back to the front because all of a sudden Sebastian Job decided that he does want to think about going side by side. The run down to Indianapolis, and he's got it this time. So Sebastian Job now up to the race lead. Josh Rogers down into second place, although Rogers immediately on the attack again as they work through Arnage. We're on board, the Vodafone on board with Mitchell de Jong right now, the Californian driver, who I wonder if he's going to try and slot it in there on the way into the Porsche curves, but no, not just yet. As you notice, Nürburgring was one of de Jong's best results in a while in this series. That's why he came into this race on the outside of the top 20, won the sprint race for those of you who are just joining us. As out front, though, is worth noting, it does seem to be that maybe Rogers is having a tiny bit of technical glitching going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe a little bit of a connection bug, although I hope not, because there's a number of the drivers from that team all driving together in one house. So, yeah, if he's having any internet connection glitches, then certainly he'll be worried about his teammates as well out there in the Coanda house, as it's known. But across the line they go again. Start of lap 3, and it's still as you were really at the front. You can see Kevin Ellis Jr. coming under pressure as well from Matt Backham in the background of that shot. That's for 5th and 6th place. Dane Warren not far behind them with Castrolado as well, and that's going to be Backham to the front of Kevin Ellis Jr. But Kevin, I don't think he's going to be too worried about that at the moment, because there is still a long way to go in this race.
There is. I must apologise. The joys of live broadcasting from home means that we're going to have the dulcet sounds of the ice cream van. So orders, please place them now. I'll go and collect them after the race. Dane Warren, Kevin Ellis Jr. separated by a 1/10 of a second on track right now. And Dane Warren, of course, he did drop back early in the sprint race. So we believe he ended up getting himself a slowdown penalty down one of the straights on the Mulsanne. But the Vodafone on board. We're now on board with Alejandro Sanchez in the number 47 car. And he's been really working his way up here. And he's now up into 12th place in the MSI Esports car.
But look at that front left. Look at the front left of his car. He has got damage on his car. He'll be struggling for top speed. It will be affecting him down these straights. Now, whilst he's sat in the slipstream here, it will help him and help negate that effect of the damage. But he won't be able to close up to the cars in front of him with that much of a bent body. So definitely will be affected top speed with Alejandro, but he's behind Source and Tetela, and those two are looking to make some moves. So if they keep on fighting, keep on squabbling, they're going to slow each other down, and that's going to allow Alejandro to be able to swoop in and maybe make some moves.
Where's my yellow pen when I need it? Because I'd love to draw it on the screen for those of you who wanted to know exactly where it is, but you could clearly see it from the Vodafone onboard there. Some damage to the front left of Alejandro Sanchez's car. Note the fact that your top three has started to break away a little bit, but also remember that in the sprint race, you were able to really close up from about 1.6, 1.7 back. We go to the split screen. Battle for your race lead at the top of your screen, and the battle going on between Alexander Thief, Thomas Tatala, Sindre Setsource, Alejandro Sanchez, that is at the bottom of your screen, because even though we have got the championship battle going on the top part of your screen, still so many storylines that will come into play, not only today, but at Monza, especially in terms of prize paying positions, but who qualifies for 2021 season. As we can see this battle for the race lead. I was just thinking before I got so rudely cut off earlier, Paul, by Patrick Holtzman, that I commentated at the very start of Sebastian Job's commentary career. And he was in the type of races where you needed to basically bide your time early. Joshua Rogers just seems to be happy running from the front right now, but I know for a fact that Seb has a lot of experience in this type of racing where you can't really pounce too quickly too early.
He's also got a lot of experience from running in other private leagues as well, in touring car leagues with myself many years ago, back in 2015 when he was just a lad. But he's got that experience of working in packs as well as Sebastian, so he is definitely one to keep an eye out on, because he has that experience of that. But looking at the side of your screen there, you can see the live points, and you can see Mitchell de Jong all the way up at 17th spot now in that battle to try and stave off relegation. So de Jong doing a really good job here today, Will, of getting some big points. Well, the race isn't over yet, but those are your live standings at the moment.
Indeed. Unfortunately, I can't see the actual points. I do know on the bubble right now is Patrick Holtzman in the number 27 car, and the first car who is on the outside looking in, that is the number 43 car of Brian Lockwood, who, due to circumstances outside his control, couldn't actually take part in the race here today, though he was ready and willing to do so. We are getting close to the halfway point in this race. They're on to the Mulsanne. They've exited Tête a couple of moments ago and heading themselves into the first completely unnamed chicane down the mall sign. A little bit of weaving going on between Sebastian Job, just looking, thinking about breaking that toe just enough at this stage, because he doesn't want to be right on the rear of Josh heading into the braking zone through the chicane. Although Josh does go a tiny bit wide on the exit of that one. And I also note that Graham Carroll actually has dropped back a little bit further. It was 0.8 of a second between himself and De Jong a moment ago. That is now 1.3 seconds. We focus back a little bit further when we look at Johan Harv, Martin Kroenke, Jeremy Bouteloup and Tommy Erskard. This is a battle 14th through 17th place on track right now, as I note the fact that Kroenke just going alongside for a brief moment in that Shuffler Motorsports car, and he has got himself Johan Harv, the number 19 Apex Racing Machine car, just behind him on track.
Yeah, so they head on through to the final part of the Mulsanne straight, and Haas is trying to get in that slipstream, trying to make that work for him to try and get ahead of Martin in front of him. And Jeremy Bouteloup, who has not had the best of first races, the sprint race, but this feature race is already plus 8 spots in this one, so really big gains for Jeremy in this race, as well as Bobby Zelensky up 8 positions in this race as well. They're the two biggest people, the biggest movers in this race. Looking to the Indianapolis once again, they're staying as they are, but the live points, they're updating all the time here on the left-hand side, and it is still Sebastian Job who leads the championship, and it's still showing there's an 80-point gap between the two of them. Well, that's what we had coming out of the sprint race, from what I recall. So those two. What Sebastian needs is that to be an 86-point gap at the end of this race to secure it today. If not, we're heading to Monza, the Cathedral of Speed. And, I mean, we saw how exciting last season's championship finale was. Anything can happen around there.
Yeah, indeed. And Connery's been working furiously behind the background, crunching the numbers as well. And he's told us that if Seb finishes P1 and then Rogers finishes P2, the point swing will go to 85 points, which would mean that in theory, they would be tied. Now, I would have to call this a very big unofficial, in terms of the maximum points event are 85. And if they do finish equal and Seb was to win here today, I think he would get the count back, but I'm not going to be the one to call that at this stage. Case in point, I'm not making that mistake when there's that much prize money on offer. But as we do now pass the halfway distance in this race, Joshua Rogers does lead by almost half a second over Sebastian Job. Mitchell de Jong, 3rd place. Graham Carroll, 4th place. Mac Backham, 5th. Dane Warren in 6th. Kevin Leonard Jr., Ricardo Castellano, Alexander Thiebe and Thomas Tattler round out your top 10. Bouteloup and Johan Harv, they're still going close together. 2 drivers, well, very local to this area on this part of the world at Le Mans. And Jeremy Bouteloup just fell back a little bit a moment ago, but was right on the gearbox of Johan Harv a couple of moments ago. So we're on the Vodafone on board right now, and I believe this is with Mitchell de Jong. He's running 3rd place on this race and is still within 1 second of the 2 leaders.
He had a big moment coming out of the S's, though, a really big twitch as they headed in towards Test Rouge once again. So de Jong, he's pedaling that car and he's giving it absolutely everything that he can to try and keep up with your 2 leaders. He wants to get as many points for himself for his automatic promotion in the championship. There has been a change of position behind them as well. Oh, a bit of side-by-side contact. That's Carl Janssen, and that's Antoine Hijla between the two of them. It's Core Sim Racing versus Apex Racing Team, and getting involved in that as well is Joshua Anderson, who's on that bubble. He's trying to get involved in the automatic promotion positions for next season's championship, and they're going 3 wide as they head on down to the second chicane. And Ed Jansen has got some significant damage to his front right. That'll be affecting his top speed. Onto the brakes, and Joshua Anderson around the outside. It gives him the inside for the second part. Great move.
Nice little sweep there by Joshua Anderson, trying to work his way back through the field a little bit. And yeah, that was mighty close. To be fair, if they crashed at that part of the racetrack, there'd have been a good chance there might have been another 2 or 3 drivers involved. So very good car control there by Carly Jansen to keep that car pointing moderately in a straight direction as they entered one of the 2 more signed chicanes. But we go back to the front of the field momentarily. Josh Rogers, Sebastian Job, Mitchell de Jong. There are other entertaining battles going on behind. I do note, by the way, that Mac Backham has now got himself past Graham Carroll.
Yeah, he certainly has, as Sebastian Job was actually looking at your race leader there. He's starting to get a little bit antsy. Oh my goodness, they've got action further down your field as well. They're still at it as Carl Jansen. 19th, Joshua Anderson. 20th, Carl Jansen. 21st is Antoine Hijlar. In towards the Indianapolis section of the track, Jack Sedgwick is involved in this one as well. And Carl seems to be a little bit of a cork in the bottle here between these drivers. Because of that damage that he's got to his car, he's slowing them down as we go full screen with that battle, because now it's Hijlar and Sedgwick. And we'll actually have a look at the Vodafone replay here of what happened to Sedgwick a little bit earlier on here. This is down the Mulsanne Straight, and this is on board with Jack Sedgwick. So you see there that Apex Racing Team car pulling out to the right-hand side, and Jansen, they all got a bit close to each other. He was trying to squeeze him there, Will. You think you're doing the best part of 165, 170 miles an hour and you're doing that.
And you're on a public road as well, so you
Yes.
actually do have some form of, little markers that tell you kind of which lane you're supposed to be staying in. I'm sorry, but that would normally be a bit of a pullover by the police and wondering whether or not you might be inebriated. But that speed as well, that's just a little bit on the dangerous side, as they all bunch themselves back up together. And Bobby Zelensky, a slowdown penalty, and around we see then goes Carly Jansen, and he's out of the race.
Yeah, that was losing control. He was caught out by Zelensky having issues with that slowdown penalty. He then got on the power, and very little that Carl could do about that. But all of a sudden now you've got this tremendous battle here between these drivers. Zelensky, Hijlar, Sedgwick. You got Dan Beats is involved in that. Alander, Jamie Fluke, the recovering Jamie Fluke. He's trying to work his way through as well. David Williams is on the back of this one as well. So there's drivers here are all trying to make either recovery drives or not. It's another one-off, and that's Hijlar.
That was just incredible there. And I believe Antoine Hijlar did actually then end up having another incident, but Antoine Hijlar, we could see that car drifting before we cut away from that shot. Bobby Zelensky, by the way, he does need every point he can get because of his precarious position in terms of the championship. So we need to keep an eye out on Bobby Zelensky's movement in this race. And of course, he did have a slowdown penalty, which at the end of the season, that one little slowdown penalty pull could end up being the difference between making it and automatically qualifying for next season's championship. And here we go again.
Yeah, Graham Carroll. This is Dane Warren Backham. Warren to the inside. Carroll. How does he hang on to that position? I don't know, but Backham losing out in that one. Here comes Kevin Ellis Jr. now, who we're on board with. He's getting really involved in all of this, and this is tremendous racing up towards the front of your field. This is all battling over 4th place. Dane Warren making his way past Graham Carroll now with the slipstream. Here comes Mac Backham on Graham. Carroll will hold that inside line. We've seen time and again that you can't really make the outside line work through Mulsanne Corner, and they all get themselves back to single file. Graham Carroll feeling the need to flash the headlights, which of course will, as we all know, in sim racing, that means move over. I'm coming past.
Yeah, but in this series, I don't think anyone is going to move over for anyone in these circumstances. And of course, we do know that Backham, if this was to be real light bulbs, Matt Backham would probably be making some companies very, very well off with their share prices. He's always been the one to use it the most. But Graham Carroll has lost a couple of places recently. And it just seems to be that Carroll has got good speed, but it just seems to be he's losing out somewhere, and it might be because of the fact that he's got no stable mates, he's got no kind of friends with him on the same piece of the racetrack, so he can't, you know, start getting involved in some of these mind games and some of this tactical racing that you see here at Circuit de la Sarthe sometimes. Dane Warren up into 4th place, however, worth noting, the gap between 3rd place and 4th place now up to 5.5 seconds. We're looking at the battle with Thomas Tattler, Alexander Thieb, and Sindre Setsas right now. 3 different teams involved in this, and of course 3 different nationalities as well. And Thomas Tattler, the Finnish driver, a part of the kind of newer entry into the season. Kova, then you've got yourselves Alexander Thieb, the number 28, the German driver, running in 10th place, and Sindre Setsas in the number 3. Well, we've seen already Corsa racing cars being in the coverage today with some very entertaining battles. I think Sindre Setsas might be giving us another one in the next couple of moments.
Yeah, absolutely. He's an exciting driver to watch, as Sindre, and I've thoroughly enjoyed watching his progression throughout this season. That front battle, by the way, the front 3, it's still as you were, so you weren't missing anything whilst we were watching all of that action further back. But Rogers, Job, and De Jong still together, about 1.2 covering the 3 of those drivers. But yeah. Back to this battle further back. So Warren is actually just pulling away slightly from Graham Carroll, and this is allowing Matt Backham now to really hook on to Carroll's slipstream and really start drawing the rest of that queue along with him. And Carroll just, I don't know what it is, but it just seems to be, as you pointed out there, Will, he just seems to be like just that little edge here compared to some of the other drivers out there. And maybe, as you mentioned, not having that stablemate around you really disadvantaging him, as Bobby Zelensky as well. 20th place, up 7 positions behind Christopher Dambeats, who's lost 8 positions in this race and is about to lose another one.
Yep, Bobby Zelensky goes past, and as I said, Zelensky really does need the points right now, as into 19th place then for the American driver as they come through one of the completely unnamed chicane. But we are going to keep it with this battle, which is going on. Bobby Zelensky, Christopher Dambeat, Jack Sedgwick, and Jamie Fluke, as Zelensky now is at the front of that train. But we're wondering whether Christopher Dambeat in the 110 car is going to think maybe about coming back in that Team Redline car. Not as of yet. As behind, oh, this is going to be fun. Jack Sedgwick in the NX Racing car. The Englishman looking to the left, looking to the right. And the reason why things are going to start heating up this lap, Paul, is because next lap, you don't want to be in a position when they're going too wide ahead of you and your lane kind of gets blocked. I say lane, I'm going to start sounding like commentators in American motorsports in a moment, but you know what I mean. Your lane gets blocked, and that essentially means that you have to get off the noisy pedal, and that completely kills your momentum.
Well, we saw it in the sprint race on that last lap, didn't we? How there were Josh Rogers tried to make it 3 wide down one of the down on the grass and everything. As in fact, speaking to the front, Job showing his nose. He's trying to get in Rogers' head. Of course, Rogers, the 2019 champion. It'll take a lot to really affect him. But Job trying his best to just put him off here. But yeah, these drivers you saw on that sprint race that we saw earlier, how getting caught up behind drivers really does affect you, and you have to get out the throttle. As you're looking at the battles here, Dane Warren at the head of that battle with Graham Carroll, Matt Backham and Kevin Ellis Jr. There's also that battle for 19th as well with Bobby Zelensky and Christopher Dambeat, Sedgwick, Williams and Fluke.
Yeah, you're right. And I was doing my research just a moment ago. I do occasionally do some research. Just thinking back to that last lap of the sprint race, where we saw the moment which might be investigated after this race with Sebastian Job. And I was looking through, thankfully for Seb, he has got enough penalty points to kind of absorb that blow if he needs to. But I think Seb right now, as we come towards the white flag, we come towards the last 4 minutes and a bit's worth of racing here around Circuit de la Sarthe, this is now going to be the case where if he's got the opportunity to make a move, I think, quite honestly, Paul, I wouldn't do it on the Mulsanne. I would try and go for it on the run down into Indianapolis. It seems to be where he's been stronger today, and also it then gives both Rogers and de Jong less time to really then try and come back at him.
There's Graham Carroll, Matt Backham and Ellis Jr. you see on the top of your screen there, giving some really interesting battles. Interesting point you make about the whole penalty points system that is involved outside of the main championship here, how they keep a track of it, of how these drivers are behaving. That's basically what's known in British motorsport terms as doing a Colin Turkington, keeping yourself nice and clean throughout the championship, so that if you do end up at the end of the championship getting involved in something silly, you can absorb it without it affecting your championship standings. And right now, Job is happy to just sit there and wait. He's just backing off slightly down the Mulsanne, the first part.
I was going to say that was more than a little bit of backing off. He was getting out of that throttle about as early as he could get away with it. I think he wants to try and lull Rogers into a false sense of security here. As we're looking on board from the rear, we were looking at the Vodafone on board from the rear of Joshua Rogers. They've only realistically got 4 opportunities by which they can make a lunge, and moving to the right-hand side of the racetrack now goes Job, and Rogers will go to cover for the time being. You've got to always remember the fact that de Jong could be a difference maker in this one as well. For most of this race, Mitchell de Jong has just been happy to ride around. Again, for de Jong, a good point over here will make his chances of qualifying automatically for the 2021 championship a lot easier. But we've got side-by-side action going on out the front. We've got side-by-side action going on for P number 8. This is Thomas Tassler, Matt Backham, Alexander Thieb, Sindre Setsos, Alexei Siakola, and Alejandro Sanchez on the last lap of this race, and they are really close together. But I'm also mindful of the fact...
Oh, Backham! Backham's off! Backham's off at Mulsanne, so he got sent off there, and Tetela involved once again. Oh dear, this is certainly going to be interesting, but that battle for 8th is really picking up. But Seb Job has not made any moves yet here.
He's not done it into Indianapolis. It's that battle at the bottom. They are going 3 wide. That is Thomas Tassler, Alexander Thieb, and Sindre Setsos as they now work their way through Indianapolis and into Arnage. Meanwhile, we've got 2 great battles going on here. Sebastian Job, as it stands, doesn't seem to be anywhere near close enough to make a move. It looks as though that Sebastian Job doesn't even want to think about making that move. He is more than happy to take an 80-point gap into Monza, because let's be honest, all he will have to do at that point is score 6 championship points and he will be the champion. And I'm sure there's going to be various different opinions and viewpoints about that strategy for Sebastian Job, but we know this season he has been so consistent, at times conservative, but with now just the 4 chicane to go, Joshua Rogers will keep the championship alive to Monza in 2 weeks' time. But there's still going to be so much work for him today. Joshua Rogers, 2nd place in the championship, finishes with the race victory. $1,000 better off after 45 minutes worth of racing. We've got more action going on behind them. We're going to flick to that one quickly. And they actually all get through the 4 chicane without any incidents, any argy-bargy that time around. And now we go back to look at Bobby Zelensky, Town again. This one, compared to the sprint race, everyone does seem to be far more calm, cool, collected. So no real major issues apart from, of course, what we saw with Matt Backham down on the exit of Mulsanne in this final lap. But Paul, very quickly, I want to talk about that strategy. We didn't see Sebastian Job push for it. He was happy to stay in second place. As a result, it's going to come up on your screen. Right call or wrong call there?
I think for the championship, it's a spot-on call. He realizes that consistency is key. Consistency wins you championships. That's exactly what he's done right here. He's got himself some really good points here and gets himself a really good chance of getting that championship in the final round at Monza. He could seal it in qualifying, theoretically. So definitely, Sebastian Job, he is in the prime position right now.
There are your results up on your screen. Josh Rogers, the Australian, claims victory from the Englishman of Sebastian Job. You got Mitchell de Jong in third place, the driver from California. Dane Warren from Australia in P number 4. Graham Carroll, the first of 2 Scots in a row, in P5. Kevin Ellis Jr. in P number 6. The Portuguese driver, Ricardo Castroledo, in 7th place. Thomas Tattler in 8th from Finland. Alexander Thieb from Germany in 9th, and Alejandro Sanchez, the Spanish driver, rounds out your top 10. Then the first of 2 Norwegian drivers, with Sinjay Setsas in 11th place, the Finn of Alexi Jussiakola in 12th, Germany's Martin Kroenke in 13th place, and France's Jeremy Boutelieb comes home 14th. Our second Norwegian driver, Tommy Ørsgaard, in P number 15. Johan Half, Matt Backham, of course, had that incident in the final lap, P number 16 and 17. Josh Anderson, Zelensky, and Christopher Dambeat rounds out your top 20. Rest of those results up on your screen. And with that, I'm off to hunt down the ice cream truck, and I can hand it back to Connery.
All right, thank you very much, Will, and well, get me an ice cream while you're there as well. That would be absolutely brilliant. But well, the stage has been set then for the final round of the season at Monza in 2 weeks' time. Joshua Rogers is able to keep the championship hope alive. However little hope it is still a mathematical possibility that Rogers will be able to go 2 for 2 in terms of championships in the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup. But Seb, a solid race, a mature decision at the end of the race, therefore, as well.
Yeah, whereas further back on the Vodafone replay we're looking at, there's Matt Backham going off at Mulsanne. He had that little bit of a rub then from Thomas Tattler as they head on down towards Indianapolis. And you saw how going 3 wide down in towards Indianapolis. It didn't work in the sprint race, but it did work here today in this feature race. And I said that Setsas was exciting to watch, and he will be certainly one to keep an eye on throughout the whole thing. But Alejandro Sanchez was the one who got ahead. You see how close that battling was further down in your field. It just goes to show that, yeah, the race at the front was close, but the race in this mid-pack is also absolutely on it as well.
I kind of wanted to bring up the topic of Sanchez as well, since mathematically it was still possible for him to win the championship coming into this event, but of course he was always going to go up against the odds, and having those qualifying issues as well certainly didn't help. So he's out of the contention here for this season. But what a season it has been for Sanchez, though, because like I've said so many times before, we didn't expect him to be in this position.
He's certainly had a good season, and he's really solidified how he's progressed through in the championship. 2-year history, and well, we've got another drivers had a good run as well.
Yeah, we do. Sebastian Job from Red Bull Racing Esports, P4 in the sprint race, P2 in the feature race, still very much in the championship lead there. Seb, you weren't able to seal the deal today, but you've set yourself up for a bit of an easier time in Monza. How do you think the racing went?
Hey guys, yeah, before I say anything else, I just want to apologize to Tommy. We've spoken about it already, but I just want to publicly apologize for taking him out in the last corner of the race 1. I was trying to make him take a wider line into the final corner, but I kind of overshot a little bit and we made contact. So yeah, very sorry to him. Ruined his 2 races, I think. So yeah, not my finest hour. But in reference to everything else, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I didn't manage to wrap it up as you said, but I figured it's not worth risking anything on the last lap to Josh. I don't know if I'd even won the race if it would have been enough anyway. So I was never gonna do something stupid today. I was always very much just wanting a couple of solid results to make it a bit easier at Monza, and yeah, I got exactly that. So I'm pretty happy with that. Other than what happened with Tommy, because that's kind of put a bummer on it all. But yeah.
Well, it's a good display of sportsmanship for you to come in and admit fault there and apologize. It's very, very good to see. But of course, coming into that round in Monza in 2 weeks' time now, surely the pressure comes off a little bit, because you can just basically finish mid-pack and just have the championship in the bag. Is that the attitude you're taking, or are you one of those drivers that just push every single race and try to do as well as possible rather than park the bus, so to speak?
I'd be lying if I said I didn't want it to end today, just so I could relax a bit earlier and have a little bit of an early holiday. But yeah, it's definitely going to be fully pushing. Last year at Monza, Josh was rapid, so yeah, going to need to push quite hard. And yeah, because you never know what's going to happen. Might as well cover all bases, and it's not over till it's over. So not going to get complacent at all. No.
Yeah, definitely no place for complacency. But thank you very much for joining us, Seb, and best of luck in the final round of the season in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks, guys.
Well, that was Sebastian Job, still a championship leader by a healthy margin, having some good results here today. Like I said, wasn't able to seal the deal against his competitor, which we'll have in the commentary booth now. Joshua Rogers keeps the championship alive coming into the last round of the season after a second place in the sprint race and the feature race win. Another feature race win to your name, Josh, second of the season, and it keeps you within a slight shot at the championship at Monza. Overall mood?
I mean, obviously we're happy. At the end of the day, it is a big gap to Seb, but we did the most that we could here today, try to maximize as best as we could. Yeah, I mean, it was an awesome result, not only for me, but for also for Mitchell as well. He's had a tough run this season too, and it was nice to have him up there as well with us. It kind of made or took a little bit of pressure off myself a little bit, I guess, in that sense. But yeah, no, overall, ecstatic. And I think the main goal here this weekend was just to try and keep the championship alive, to give one more chance at maybe something to turn around. But I mean, at the end of the day, Seb's been doing a fantastic job, and he's been scoring points when others haven't been. So that's why he's so far ahead at the moment. And yeah, I mean, obviously we're going to push as hard as we can, like always, to try and close that up. But we're going to need a lot of luck. So all we can do is go out there and do the best job we can. And ultimately, that's what we did here today.
That's all that really anyone asks for. Just try your best, and if it doesn't happen, well, there is always next year. But you've already got one championship in the bag, Josh. It would have been nice for you, I guess, to get the second on the second time of trying. But it's not outside the realms of possibility. But like you said, it's going to require a huge amount of luck in the final round of the season. And just talking about the race that we just had, though, of course, you've mentioned yourself, you always had help up there at the front of the field. You had Mitchell there as sort of a rear gunner to try and cause Seb a little bit of a problem. I'm not saying he's doing that intentionally, but it's quite nice to have someone there helping you out. Was that particularly pivotal in how the racing shaped up here today, or were you able to do it even on your own, 1v1?
I mean, I think in the end, Seb didn't necessarily want to risk anything. So ultimately, I think, I mean, today it was mainly just impacted me mentally, I guess. And I mean, it's no different to whether it's Mitchell or another teammate or just another driver in general. Whenever it's a 3 or 4-way battle compared to a 2-way battle, it's always just has that kind of different feeling. And at the same time, when it's a one-on-one battle, it's a little bit more predictable, but usually a little bit more stressful in some cases as well. So, but yeah, I mean, today I think it certainly helped for sure. There's no doubt about that. But yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Josh. Second place in the championship, still that slight chance to come away with things at the end of the season. Wishing you the best of luck come Monza. And with that, we actually have one extra interview here before we wrap up. That will be with Joshua Rogers' stablemate, in Mitchell de Jong, who is running with him at the front of the field throughout that feature event. Mitchell, finally, a good result here today, getting yourself onto the podium in the feature race, and of course the sprint race win as well. Surely that's basically everything you need with regards to keeping yourself in the championship for 2021.
Dude, it's been a long time since I've been up here. Man, it feels really good to get this result. To be honest, I didn't expect much this race. I know we had a good one last time around here, but for the rerun, of course, everyone's a little more prepared, kind of knows what to expect. Yeah, we just kind of strung together a solid lap, nothing too special, but, it gave us a pull with how the format is. And we were able to break the draft in the sprint race mostly. And, we had a clean run. I was stoked for that, but you can't really feel comfortable after that. Just seeing how the feature is with the draft. It was a whole new race again, and kind of the same thing worked out. I got to tag along with Sebi and Josh there. They have insane pace, I tell you what, and they kind of dragged me along out of the draft, away from the other cars, and we just had a good run from there. It feels so good to be on the podium.
Yeah, but it comes through in the tone of your voice as well. You just seem really happy about how things have gone. But this isn't the end of your racing here today, because remind everyone what's going on in a couple of hours' time.
Yeah, for sure. We have the IRX World Championship coming up in about 2 hours, I believe. So it's been a busy week. I'm also trying to qualify to get my World Championship license for the Oval as well. So on Tuesday, we had our final Road to Pro round. We made it in that to the next stage. Now we had Porsche right now, and Rallycross here in a little bit. So it's going to be really nice to compete in a full championship this year for Rallycross. Let's see if we can, put together a good result. This first one's going to be very tricky. Everyone's very fast this year. So we'll give it our best. Let's see if we can keep this momentum going.
Yeah, absolutely. So stay tuned for that in a couple of hours' time on the iRacing social media, on all of our usual stream platforms as well for the iRacing Rallycross World Championship. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic event. $25,000 on the line in that one, and Mitchell is going to be one of the many drivers that takes part in that one. But Mitchell, thank you very much for joining us. Like I said, first time in a while, but hopefully at the end of the season and perhaps into 2021, it'll be a little bit better luck here in this series.
Thank you very much.
Well, there we go. That's your top three here in the main race. We're working on trying to get you live points, or points as they stand right now, coming into Monza. Of course, those will be subject to change depending on investigations up and down the grid poll, but it'll be very interesting to see how things lay.
Certainly will, but provisionally at the moment, from a bit of a back of an envelope calculation, I've got Job on 590 points and Josh Rogers in 519. So about a 79 point gap. No, you see, maths at this time.
Maths isn't your strong point, Paul,
it's not a strong point of mine. It never was at school, but obviously take those points with a pinch of salt with me working that out. But these drivers, they've been working hard all year so far this season, and the level of competition that they produce is absolutely sensational. How millimetre close they get to each other out there on track. We saw that all today, all the way through the field, from the front to the mid-pack. So it was definitely great to be able to focus on some of those mid-pack battles as well, because for too long we focus up front. But it shows what tremendous racing there is between all these drivers, and it isn't over yet. Never say never in this championship.
Yeah, and this championship more than any other, perhaps, given a couple of dramatic moments we've already had throughout this season. Nothing is outside the realms of possibility. So Sebastian Job, he has to keep that in mind coming into the final round of the season. He has to make sure that finishes the race. To win a race first, you have to finish. And that is exactly what Sebastian Job needs to do at Monza. He can't afford to have any early issues. He can't afford to get shuffled towards the back of the grid and score minimal points. He just needs to be there mid-pack or above, and he'll be able to take the championship in 2 weeks' time.
But as I said at the start of today's broadcast as well. He can't go in with that mentality of, I only need to finish or finish mid-pack. That's the worst place to be in one of these races, because that mid-pack is so competitive that, you know, one little mistake and all of a sudden you're in a tyre barrier facing the wrong way thinking, what just happened to my championship? He needs to go into the next round in a couple of weeks' time with the same mentality that he's got in each and every one of these races, which is, I'm going for the win, I'm going up front. And what better way would it be for him to win a championship than to actually win those races in a couple of weeks' time? That is what I would say is a sign of a champion. But he doesn't need to do that. He can just sit behind Rogers and win it that way.
Yeah, that is a completely valid option that he has in the final race of the season. But you know, still, like I said, everything can. Weirder things have happened. Let's just say that. We're trying to grasp at straws a little bit here to try and give, the Josh Rogers fans a little bit of confidence about their driver coming into the final round of the season. But there are possibilities, and it's definitely not 100% sealed just yet. It could have been at the end of this event, but it wasn't. We go to Monza. But here are your points as they stand. 75 points is the gap between Sebastian Job and Joshua Rogers. Remember, the maximum that you can score across a race day is 85 points. So that's not a lot of room to work with if you're Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. It is just between those two drivers, as you confirmed earlier, Connery. Alejandro Sanchez is out of that championship battle. It's just Job and Rogers. So all Job needs to do is score 11 points next time out, and he's champion. He's got it in the bag, but he's got to be careful to not end up in the steward's room, which he may be. We don't know yet, but he may be after that race one incident.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that one come Monday, when the steward's decisions usually come through in this one, to see if there's any effect there. But it's just here at the Circuit of the South, it's been a brilliant stage setting situation for Monza. Those points that you saw, of course, were provisional, so that can change by Monday, but at least from what we know now, it's 10 points the advantage that Sebastian Job has.
Yeah, it certainly does. And yeah, it all comes down to the final round. That's the only thing you need to do. So don't miss that final round in a couple of weeks' time, because that is going to be absolutely sensational. And I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to a couple of hours' time as well with the iRacing Rallycross Championship, because I'm going to be on commentary for that as well.
Yeah, so the racing action is not done here on the iRacing streaming platforms. We have the iRacing Rallycross World Championship round number 1 coming at you in just a couple of hours' time. So stick around for that. Maybe even hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. I sound like a YouTuber already, but it's the best way to get alerted every single time we do something on the iRacing pages here. But with that, we're going to wrap up, and we head to the final round in Monza in 2 weeks' time to decide the 2020 Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup champion. Goodbye.